John reads the world through vibration, the shop floor humming secrets only his bare feet can truly translate. The chime cascade tells him when a customer enters, but today the footsteps drag with a widow's sorrow. Abigail sets a tarnished music box on the counter, its silence louder than any broken chime he's repaired. Her voice trembles as she explains it was her late husband's, and it stopped the day he died. John's fingertips glide over the cold metal, feeling grief etched into every scratched tooth of the silent Kong. He leans close, inhaling faint rose oil and heartbreak, and says gently, "I can give it a new song." She watches his sightless blue eyes focus somewhere beyond the visible, seeing not darkness, but a different light. Over days, she returns, learning the names of tiny gears as his patient hands guide her trembling fingers. He teaches her that the escapement wheel releases one tooth at a time, just as healing measures time. Without sight, John hears the catch in her breath and feels the pulse fluttering in her delicate wrist. He knows her moods by the resonance of her footsteps. Hope strides, but grief still sometimes shuffles in. Abigail realizes she is no longer bringing a simple repair, but collecting pieces of her own scattered heart. One afternoon, she asks shyly if he might trace her face, to see her the only way he can. His clean, calloused fingers map her brow, the bridge of her nose, and the curve of her trembling lips. At that moment, she feels more truly seen than ever in the eyes of any sighted man before. He whispers, "You are shaped exactly like the melody I've been hearing in my dreams since you arrived." The music box finally sings again under his care, a waltz lilting like hope reborn from dust and rust. She weeps at the sound, and he catches her tear on his thumb, reading its salt like sacred braille. Their love grows not in stolen glances, but in shared silences filled by the ticking of 100 clocks. He builds her a wooden heart with a tiny pendule that swings when she holds it against her chest. She learns to communicate with gentle taps on his palm, a private Morse code spelling out always and forever. One evening, her cruel brother-in-law barges in demanding she sell the shop and marry a man with power. John hears the threat in the man's stomping boots and the predatory rhythm tightening Abigail's anxious, shallow breathing. He steps between them, his unseen gaze fixed unerringly on the intruder's throat, listening for aggression like a hunter. His voice is calm steel. "Leave her in peace, or I'll calibrate your heartbeats into permanent silence right now." The brother-in-law hears the lethal precision in that quiet vow and retreats from a blind man he suddenly fears. Abigail presses her forehead to John's back, realizing his darkness holds more courage than any gunfighter's bright midday. In the aftermath, he holds her while she shakes, his steady hands reminding her bones how safety truly feels. He proposes by placing a polished pocket watch in her palm, its inscription in braille. Until time runs out, she realizes the raised dots spell her name and is intertwined, a promise unreadable to the judging world. They marry in the shop surrounded by ticking companions, every clock celebrating the precise moment their souls sensed. The townsfolk whisper that a blind man cannot keep a wife safe, but Abigail only laughs at their smallness. She says his ears can detect a snake's rattle before any horse spooks, and his heart hears God clearer. John teaches her to repair the simplest timepieces, her small hands becoming his eyes while he guides from memory. Together, they build a grandfather clock that chimes their combined heartbeat rhythm, recorded by a doctor friend's old stethoscope. Every hour, their love literally fills the house with proof that two pulses learn to beat as one. Months later, a fever sweeps the territory, and John falls desperately ill, his strong body racked by chills. Abigail nurses him through black nights, pressing her lips to his burning forehead, willing her life into his veins. Delirious, he whispers, "Don't let the music stop," and she winds the box endlessly, its song a prayer. She pours all her love into his hands, knowing touch is the only tether pulling him back from darkness. When he finally wakes, the first thing he does is reach for her face. reading her exhaustion and relief. He murmurs, "I heard you calling from a million silent miles, and I followed your heartbeat home." His recovery strengthens their bond into tempered steel, a covenant forged in the fire of absolute vulnerability and trust. They start a school for blind children, teaching them that fingertips can read wood, metal, and the language of love. John crafts tactile storybooks that tell their romance through raised lines, so sightless children can feel real happiness exists. Abigail learns to play the music box melody on the piano, and every note feels like a kiss. One autumn, she feels familiar flutters in her womb and guides his hand to the tiny flutter of life. He listens to her belly with the same reverence he uses on antique mechanisms, hearing the future's steady tick. Their daughter is born with her mother's curls and her father's gift of seeing the world through sound. He names her Clara, after the clear chime of a perfectly tuned bell, and holds her against his heart. Though he will never see her smile, he feels it in every pat of baby fingers on his face. Abigail catches him humming a lullaby that mingles the music box waltz with the rhythm of a sleeping child. When Clara grows, she guides her father by the hand, describing sunsets in words he can color inside. Abigail often finds them at the bench, his hands guiding Clara's tiny fingers to straighten a broken spring. She whispers thanks to a broken music box that taught her love doesn't need eyes, only infinite, patient attention. On their 10th anniversary, John unveils a bronze sundial in the garden, notched with braille for our eternal day. The locals finally understand that his darkness was never a handicap but a sacred filter for what truly matters. They begin to seek him for wisdom, realizing a man without sight often carries the clearest soul vision. John never loses a customer's heirloom. He says every broken clock holds a story waiting to be heard again. Abigail writes his biography with a quill and seals it with wax pressed by the carved wooden harp pendulum. The book's final page contains a single sentence in raised lettering. "I saw you perfectly with my fingertips." John runs his hand over the message and smiles, knowing ink and love are both meant for touching eternity. When their first silver strands appear, Abigail notices John feeling each one with a grin, calling it moon-kissed wisdom. They dance in the workshop every night after locking the door, a metronome, their only musical accompaniment yet enough. His hand on her lower back reads every sway and curve, a conversation in motion needing no verbal translation. He can tell when she's happy by the lightness in her twirl and when she's tired by her weight. They age like fine mahogany, polished by years of small kindnesses and the persistent chime of peaceful mornings. One winter morning, John does not wake, a serene smile frozen on lips that never needed eyes to love. Abigail places his hand on her face one last time, knowing his final journey is through touch into forever. She buries the music box with him, its melody now a private communication between heaven and her memory. Clara inherits the shop and hears her father's voice in every tick, feeling his lessons in every gear. She teaches her own son that power isn't in fists or bullets, but in listening to what's unspoken. Their town erects a clock tower with a blindfolded figure holding a heart-shaped pendulum, a monument to otherworldly love. Abigail joins John 3 springs later, and Clara finds her with a note that says, "I hear him calling." Now, every new apprentice in the shop learns first to close their eyes and feel the clockwork's true song. John and Abigail become a legend, the blind man who fixed broken time and the widow who healed his soul. Travelers say, if you listen closely in the silent desert night, you can still hear their combined heartbeats chiming. Their love proves that the deeper seeing happens when eyes close and one courage lets another completely hold them. The world remains loud, but their story endures, a quiet masterwork taking inside every heart brave enough to truly feel.